You got 10 on screen. Are we due to be switched off too? 8 o'clock. First of all, welcome. It's a great delight to see at least 29 of us of a congregation of 500 here tonight. It's a very small percentage. But I'm really grateful for the time that you've taken to be here. I think it's an important meeting, the annual general meeting, and it also gives us a time to reflect on the past year and what things are lying in wait for us for this year, as well as a refreshing look at some people whom I haven't seen for a while and some people who I see often. It's very nice for me to do that. And thank you to the technical staff for taking the time for being here. If we could start with the words of wisdom from Rabbi, if she'd come up.
So first of all, I wanted to just thank you for not giving up on the community. It's been a year of transition, but I'm actually happy that we are here. And I'm going to talk a little bit of what I have in mind for next year. So I spent this year some time to take a photograph in my mind, what I'm seeing around me and what I think we might need. And I hope you'll give me a minute to walk you through how I see it. And at some point, then I'm going to also, in the next couple of weeks, I'm going to call you and say, I'm going to come over with a bottle of wine and you make sure that your pocketbook is open, because without money, we can't do any of this. And I don't want to fundraise on things that are not going well. I want to fundraise on a vision for the future, which I think is eminently doable. So last week I spent some time writing my thoughts on what I would like to see. And it resulted in something that I call the Truma Fund. Now, at the core of the idea of the Truma Fund is the Torah portion with the same name. And it actually describes the building of the first collective house of worship in the history of the Jewish people. The first, but not the last. And what is so interesting, with the destruction of the temple in Jerusalem fresh in everybody's memory, rather than complaining, kvetching, or despair, we had a very different response. So we said the temple no longer stood, but its memory remained. And that memory and that identity was strong enough to bring all the Jews together in collective worship. And that memory actually was the foundation of what we know today as our synagogue. There is one sentence I want to highlight this upcoming year. It says, "They shall make a sanctuary for me, and I shall dwell in them." So I want you to understand this upcoming year that God doesn't live in a building, but in its builders, and not in a physical place, but in your heart. So the sanctuary, the synagogue, was always a place that had the effect of opening the hearts of those who stood there before, if not their rabbi, then before God, a proclamation that God lives in the human heart whenever it's willing to open itself unreservedly and willingly. So Moses, the first rabbi we had, he had similar problems, right? How do you take a bunch of difficult slaves and then turn them into a group with a collective memory and a collective identity, and for this congregation, a collective vision? And I don't think human nature has changed all that much. You get them to build something together. For Moses, it was a portable sanctuary, and for us, is building the future together for this congregation, for its members and its future members. So the best way of making people be part of it is that I am going to try and enlist you in my shared project of the future. What and how much you give is, at the end of the day, not that important, but that we all give is essential, because it's a future that we have to build together. So the Truma Fund is the term we're going to use next year for your continued financial support, but it serves a much higher purpose than keeping the lights on. Part of our mission for next year is to foster a sense that we are all part of an extended congregational family through warmth and supportive connection. And each and every gift counts, whether I ask you for 100 Rand, 1,000 Rand, or 100,000 Rand. And don't be surprised, because I will. I want you to briefly hear what the proposals are. The proposals can be given by one organization or by one family to be invested in crude for the interest, and to so establish a better financial footing, but also a much more excitable and exciting congregation. And also people can decide that they want to contribute to one particular proposal rather than buy the entire proposal. But each and every donation and each and every one of you is needed and valued. So one of the things I want to do is that we will create something, a Cineplex Shabbat, which is a program centered around a Shabbat experience beyond just a traditional service. It aims to bring a much greater part of the community in, and I know we have that community because I did services with your children last Rosh Hashanah and Yom Kippur, so I know you're there. We just haven't activated you enough, so I want to make sure that we have family services, early childhood services, discussions, themes. So Cineplex Shabbat are themed services. So for instance, there's a famous Jewish jazz composer whom you might remember, Kurt Weill. What you might not know is that his father was a chazan, a cantor, and he wrote some beautiful liturgical music that is not sung in synagogues, but that shouldn't stop us. So one of the first things we're going to do is do a Kurt Weill Shabbat service in which we'll set the entire liturgy to jazz music, golden standards, and then followed by a different kind of a dinner. We're going to try and do a flamenco and a tango Shabbat. We're going to do some other things that you might actually find interesting. There might be a Shabbat on the South African musical experience, and try and bring that to you and talk about the Jewish influence in all those elements. And it will bring a little different kind of a flavor to it. I promise you it won't be a cheese Shabbat because that is too Dutch. Okay, there's also a family fund that I would like to see for liturgical renewal and ritual excellence. It allows us to do a youth choir, a musical Shabbat ensemble, a training project in trope and cantillation, a publication of a new Bet Emmanuel Yiskor memorial prayer booklet, hopefully our own Sidur, Tuning the Soul. All of those, again, are there to help you participate and also elevate our quality of our worship and honor our progressive traditions with reverence, but also innovation. I'd like us to think about a fund for the rededication of the Wall of Remembrance at West Park Cemetery. If we have it, it should be a wall that we are proud of and not a wall that is in disrepair. So I want to rededicate it, refurbish it. I want to honor all the people who are there. With formal ceremonies, with the refurbishment of all the plaques, which are at the moment not in great condition, planting appropriate green space, and also engage our community also to really keep that place a place of remembrance and respect. I want a fund for the restoration and preservation of our Sifrei Torah, perhaps the renewal of the Ark, and some ritual silver. They're in need of repair, so it would be fun if we do that. I'd like us to see, especially for our families, to set a fund up for early childhood and youth programming. So I'd like to have taught Shabbat services and maybe also an early childhood and youth center here to create a dynamic and inclusive space where Jewish identity, learning, leadership, and community can get together not only separately, but with their children as families, because I want to have all of you children, from this big to post-bar mitzvah. I'd like to be able to take our teenagers to Cape Town, maybe take them for a paintball fight with the rabbi. It's not just programming, it's really an investment in our community's future. And the future are your children, our youth, and to make sure that when they come in, it's a joyful and a meaningful and a relevant experience for them. And right now we don't have that. I know that we have the capacity for it because I saw it at the high holidays last year. You have them, we just have to do all of that. So all of these programs are there to connect you better to each other, better to what we do. We will send this out to you so you can actually see what your rabbi concocted. And we'll have different levels from cornerstones to pillars to visionary to guardians to leader and builder. And that means that everybody, no matter how little or how large, that we count you, that you're part of the congregation, and that we really put our shoulders under this community for the future. I know we can do it, and I hope you will join me with it.
Thank you, Rabbi. I think some of the people may have questions after my speech as well, which they would like to take up. The next item is, are there any official apologies that we should record? Anybody got any lists? Then the previous minutes were distributed. And if we need to ratify those minutes, they were distributed. And I'd like to take it as read. And are there any, are you all prepared, or do I have a proposer and a seconder who says this was the true business of the last annual general meeting? Do I have a proposer? David? Graham, thank you. You just record that, please. Now,
there's the apologies.
okay, so the apologies that we've had are from Taffy and Jill Adler, Greg and Ruth Jordan, Mary and Joseph, and Merle Williams. So those are recorded. Are any of them online? No. Okay. And if they're online, then they're not needing to apologize. The next report is not usually this order, but I think it was an order that Ian put in, that he always thought that finances were the most important thing that we should be attending to, which is probably partially correct. But on the basis of that, the Treasury report will now be kindly dealt with by Christine, who's kindly agreed to come out of hiding in Weltevreden Park to be with us, to take us through the financials. Oh, Johan. No, I'm delighted. No one told me, Johan. Sorry. So Johan was on Mancom once, and I should have known you might have given it away. Carry on.
Good evening, everyone. I would like to start financials. We all have different meaning and understanding of what they entail. So I'm going to deal with the financials, gratitude and appreciation to Christine for all work that she has put in and continue to put in with where we are, as well as, I think, recognition for all the work that Ian has done. So if we start with the financials, and we look at something which is the balance sheet, nothing substantially has changed year on year if we just do a basic comparison. If we look at the end of the financial statements, which is essentially our supplementary income or supplementary information, the shul is very much dependent on rental income. And the tenants that we have are substantially assisting us to maintain this building and to continue it as such. And if we look at our rental income year on year, fairly similar. Our net rental income, where we take our lease income, deduct all our expenses, virtually the same if compared 2023 to 2024. But what it does do is it puts the Schul's finances in a potentially vulnerable situation in instances where cash flow is not coming through as anticipated by means of membership dues that are not necessarily paid on time, and or instances where our tenants are not paying on time. And I think that's where we find ourselves for most of last year, a portion, even though the financials are similar. And if we were to take a snapshot of where we find ourselves at this stage, and hence the appeal that has come out for our members to pay their dues, and Christina has been quite instrumental in helping us in that regard. When we look at cost pressure, and we experience this in our personal lives as well, municipal costs increase quite considerably year on year, above inflation adjustments, and that has an impact on the Schul's finances as well. So our appeal going forward would be to support all the initiatives that Rabbi has put forward for our members to continue to pay their dues and to assist with additional functions and additional funds that we would love to raise. The building in itself, we continue to look after to the best of our ability. And then we deal with the city of Johannesburg, like we do in our personal capacities as well, as and when water, for instance, break, or if there are additional electricity charges that come. So in conclusion, our rental income year on year, fairly similar. We are very dependent on our tenants paying their rent on time. We are exposed from a cost perspective with municipal costs going up and the extent to which it has an impact on our profitability. And we're very grateful for our members that pay their dues on time. Again, it has an impact on the way we handle our finances. If there are questions on the finances, we will do our best to respond to them. I may not be able to get to them straight away, but Christine and I will come back to specific questions should they arise. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I know that we'll have a very difficult in later. I heard the senior team. There were a few things that struck me, and some of it was about going forward. The first is that donation seems to be very much down in 23-24, 300,000 and down. So that was the first query about why are we going perhaps not providing us with that extra fund? I don't know that you don't have told us, but why have we gone down up to 300,000 rand? The second thing that struck me very strongly was legal expenses. Now, I don't know what that, but given that necessarily poured out of certain past things that happened, that was about 140,000 rand more than the previous year. So it's an interesting question as to whether or not that we expect that's not going to continue, and so therefore that is really a reduction, a full reduction. And also, obviously, which also seems to be reducing. I imagine so. You saw now rabbis and immigration costs were about 200,000 rand more than the previous year. Hopefully, that is saving, right? And so those were, I think, the main things that struck me. And I suppose the question I have is also, I know we have that sort of cash. How can we try and stabilize the situation? It's not that we actually can't cover our costs. It's that we can't cover them in certain months. And how can we try and stabilize the community in that sense? Take another fund, or perhaps those who are willing to provide us bridging finance or whatever it is for a period that we in difficulty.
Thank you, David. Anybody want to take that one? The first one with the major donor.
Specifically, children. Hello, everyone. As far as the donors are concerned, off the top of my head, I can't specifically say who hasn't been giving that gave in the past. As far as the legal fees are concerned, we spent 105,000 rands on basically labour law lawyers. We've spent 49,000, excuse me, on Schindler's dealing with the water, Joburg water leak, and trying to get them to act upon that. And 10,000 rands on a subscription to, again, labour lawyers. But we've cancelled that now. And the other question was, stabilising cash flow. That's where Ian is most sadly missed, because he was the person that always put his hand in his pocket to give us that stability, to see us over the rough months, and he is sadly missed. Any other questions while I'm up here before I go and hide again? Peter?
I think we can be much better and more organized. How about us and then we after this year, personally, not important, so we need to come in on time so we don't have this. And I like that it's going to be a youth and activity, and I want to make sure that we get people to donate so we can do these things. Or we have several people who promised that they would do things. 30,000 up, and if we do a better job, knocking on the door and telling people how important it is, so that we can carry this community, I think we can do a lot better, and I think the world is going to come out, even with the money is not, I think that's very important, and that we don't have to do.
I just want to ask a question. We tend to do, I wouldn't say a lot, but some funerals and memorial services for non-members. Do we actually charge them and get money in? Because
For the most part, yes.
it's not in the past. And this, yeah, I'm talking from experience, because the times when we haven't had a rabbi, when we haven't had somebody to do it, and I get the feeling that I or one of the other lay leaders has called them to do something like this, and it just gets forgotten. And no, you know, well, thanks very much for coming and doing it, but nothing comes to the shoe.
No.
And I think that is wrong.
Normally it would do. We've got a process whereby if a funeral or a cremation is arranged, and a cremation is much easier to sort out with the finances, but with a funeral, when a funeral is arranged for the rabbi or a lay reader, the family should fill out a form. It gets sent to me. I raise the invoice and then they pay. Unfortunately, there has been a great hiatus in that process. We didn't have the best administrative person in the front office for a while, and a lot got overlooked. And I know the one that you did, Peter, a couple of years back in December. We never did get any money, even though I did contact him. Obviously, it was a case of, oh, well, that's under the water under the bridge and we don't have to pay. I don't know how much we might have lost through that, but I know we have lost some. It doesn't happen with cremations because obviously I get invoiced by the funeral directors, and I obviously make sure that I invoice the people who are the family of the cremated person.
I think the services or the financial contribution should rank as a creditor in deceased estates, and the executor should pay for it.
I try and avoid that where possible, because we have had to wait years in some cases to be paid. So I try and and we have to pay Tom Kite within a fortnight of their invoice. So I try to get the money paid over by the family as soon as possible, either before or after the cremation, so that we do get the money in.
Correct, if it's not paid, they'll pay and the executive will pay.
I presume so, but I try not to let that happen. And most people, to be fair, are quite happy to pay. Leonard. Well, the cost that we charge people is just for the rabbis officiating the service, and that is 7,000 plus VAT, which is 8,050. A cremation, it's gone up horribly. I think it costs us about 18,000. So I charge the family anything up to 23,000, depending on their circumstances and whether they want a memorial or what. I can probably tell you more by the actual costs, funeral costs, funeral 66. That's going to be probably about 4. With some 66, am I right? 72. Yeah, that's about 4 cremations on our expenses side. On the income side, it would be 4 plus a few memorials, say, a few funerals. And of course, a funeral is pure profit, if you like, because we don't have any expenses paid out against that. Catherine? Well, it would, yes. I mean, if the family don't pay, then obviously the invoice does go to the estate. It doesn't help in the case of the families that have had funerals who haven't had forms, and I don't invoice them. But generally, we've always been paid for a cremation, always. Is that all right? Does that answer the question, Catherine? It does.
Any more questions? You're free. If I could just add something about the major donors. We only have about 5 major donors, and they have contributed each year on an increasing amount. So I'm not sure exactly why it reflects that, and I suspect it has more to do with COVID than with their reluctance to do that. But with regard to this year, we can't keep ducking the issue that we spend more than we earn. You know, we just can't get away from that. And that the fact that Ian used to cover us in these lapses just dug us further into a hole of financial stress. And so the steps that we're taking now, and which I refer to in my own report, are to reduce the big expenses initially, and to revise all the other expenses. You know, we have a diminishing congregation, so even if they paid their subscription, it's less. I mean, that's for sure. And you have to face that against increasing costs, which are both municipal, at considerably multiple insurance costs and all the other costs that go into running a shul. We just have ignored those increases and carried on exactly as we were. We've also employed staff, far too many for the size of the congregation or for what they're required to do. I'm not saying that they do the work, but we didn't need their financial packages are determined by an annual increase. And if poor Christine started something like 20 years ago, her package, which started off within reason for this congregation, is no longer in balance. And that would go for Russell. So, these are things that we didn't pay attention to. And we now have to pay attention to them. And that's really where this is. Are there any more questions on the finances? Catherine? I'm not that I can answer them.
There's something there that shows a deposit for repatriation of the rabbi. It's almost 50,000. Is that something you can get back from the Israeli government?
The big problem was that I could not find anybody who had any proof of the receipt. The rabbi said that he probably had it somewhere, but he couldn't find it when I asked. And so it looks as though that is gone, because we've got no proof that we actually paid it if they received the money.
So then just to clarify on the funeral, sorry, because it's about 84,000, and the number of you charge that is that we charge them, and then we also
the actual income received is 85,000 about, but the actual cost was 66,000. So we do make a profit, but we obviously have to.
So that total is the gross total.
The gross income is 85. The gross expenses is 66. So the net value is about 20,000.
Because I could be doing like more than one thing, or sometimes a week, like before, that's at least 30 a year.
We used to do a lot of inclinations. I don't know why we haven't had many. I think it was last year. No, before last, we had 2, 3, and that's crazy. I used to do about 10 to 12, 1 month. That's really wrong. People aren't being promoted. Yeah. Not something you can plan.
Just with regard to the repatriation, I know David made a donation to the shul that would cover that repatriation. And he feels that until the people return to Israel, it wouldn't be, we wouldn't be able to claim that fund. That whether the fund was paid or not, I don't know. But the point is that we can't claim for it until the rabbi returns to Israel. I think that's the occasion. No, it may be whether that fact that we've got no record of it is a bit worrying. But the point is that it must have been paid. So I'm sure we can find that. Yeah, no, I agree. David.
Now this while last year you showed 338,000 deficit, that is largely due to the fact that we got roughly 300,000 deaths in donation. So it's not that the schools is spending profitably or not okay. It's not doing well on the income side. And even in that sense, in the last year, there was actually a surplus of a similar amount, well, actually quite a large amount, 675,000. And what Johan says, the issue is not actually that we can't cover our costs. The problem is we can't cover our costs at specific points here. And so the question is, how do we manage the flows such that we can cover it, or that we, in some senses, has some kind of bridging finance where it asks you then to go period. So the question, that's the question for me is what plan is there to kind of manage that issue? Other than I take the point we made to cut some costs, but ultimately that's not going to solve the cash flow problem if there's certain points where we actually go over.
Then I can see two levels. The first one is between the three numbers, if you look at the base, there is a 600,000 plus tax deduction, which distorts the between the three. So it's a non-cash flow item. There used to be a tax provision in respect of taxes that we could have paid to the receiver, which we ended up not paying. So if you look at between the three numbers, it's actually tax credits. And there should have been tax credits. So if you remove that 600,000, then it's more comfortable. That's the first point. The second point speaks to, if you look at our leases, some are payable quarterly, 6 monthly, the tower, for instance, gets paid.
So which one?
There's some of the towers that actually, there's not a frequent monthly cycle of expense that is in place. So that causes the cash flow to be at stress at certain months and other months. Not over the 12 months picture, and it prevents a position, but it's not the peaks and the troughs as such. Some of the considerations that I have is to potentially go to our tenants and see whether or not we can adjust those cash flows to a more frequent cash flow as opposed to quarterly 6 monthly ending. And it would also be very specific with regards to costs associated with expenses. So if we incur costs with Johannesburg and we lay out cash to pay that electricity bill, but we're going to get paid later, we expose our cash flow. What can we do to have additional deposits? What can we do to actually get paid before we have to pay the We have a very specific instance with regards to water. Water that caused in that sense. Now having a debate with the Johannesburg and get credit for that, incurring incremental costs associated with cleaning the matter. Those are all the kind of peaks and troughs that we need to do. I think the most difficult would be to see whether or not we can increase the frequency in which we do our lease payments, which then matches the cost that we have with the block. Because if you look at the next 12 months, it looks like we square. But we have peaks and troughs.
David?
David, I might say, the way to solve the problem is, as we did in the past, is run organisation at a profit and build a reserve. But we are not running it. You need fairly deep pockets to get you through those profits. And the sensible thing is run a modest but consistent profit. And then the problem solves itself.
Catherine?
So Johan says, it's not that we know the past, but we didn't know it. And we're so different from the love. And we have a very old community. It's a lot of our thing. And that's the way we're doing.
Sorry, I didn't hear your answer, sir, or your question. You spoke to David. I didn't hear if it's over or not over. Oh.
It's not that we made a profit, we didn't do it.
You haven't made a profit for. Sure, thank you. No, that's the truth, I'm afraid. But of course.
Reserve 2 years ago, 2020, 2021, 22. We had 300,000 in a high reserve account. Unfortunately, then we had to have the roof repaired.
Yeah.
Where it goes.
I must say that ongoing expenses to maintain this place are quite severe, and that we often, and poor Russell has to duck and dive and choose which things he can fix and choose, and each they're all expensive. They're all expensive. But I agree with all your sentiments. Is that we should have a profit. We should have a fund, and it's very difficult, particularly to go to donors ad hoc. most of the donors have foundations that I know, and those foundations work once a year. Like you put your application in, and then they have a meeting, and then they will make a donation or not make a donation. They don't easily respond to, oh goodness, we're short this month. Can we jack it up? You know, Ian was fantastic, but he didn't solve the problem. He just solved the immediate problem. The problem is that we've got a diminishing congregation. We've got with the diminished economic resources and increasing expenses, which have been relentless. I mean, try and get they just go up whether you want to or not to, and you can't talk them down a bit. The other thing is that a lot of the expenses that occurred, the legal ones, were one-offs, so not likely to come again. In that sense, I must tell you that the one lawyer forwent at least half of his costs when he heard what our situation was. And he didn't charge us for any, up to a point he charged us, and then nothing after that. So it wasn't as if there wasn't goodwill from those people, there was. I honestly think that I'll get to, but the reality needs to be dealt with. Otherwise we're not going to be here next year, in my mind anyway. If I could ask you if we could move on, the financial statements. Yes, Lenny. I think that's how it is at the moment, but we're reviewing all that now. We're reviewing also the fees. We increase the fees by some marginal amount each year, and that doesn't keep up with what we require. This congregation should be able to run itself on the subscriptions, and all the other stuff should be extra. Instead, it's the other way around, and that's not healthy at all. And these are very difficult conversations for a congregation, but we've got to have them. I don't have any other solutions for that. But to take us back to the formalities of today, the financial statements have been circulated, they have been discussed, and can I sign off on them? There's nothing controversial or terrible in it, but we just got to do this from a statutory point of view. And I hope those who are listening online have heard the arguments, and that you don't have any disagreements with the conclusions that we've reached. And I will sign this and pass this on to Christine. So can we say that we've approved the annual financial report? Okay. I deal with some of these issues in my report, but I wrote it out before this discussion, so forgive me if I'm repeating some of the issues. Let me start where I started. Shalom. Thank you all for being here today, in the presence and in spirit, in presence and in spirit. It's a privilege to stand before you again as the chair of this, what I consider a very remarkable community. But let me start with my thanks to Rabbi for enduring the slings and arrows of the South African bureaucracy and finally joining us officially a few months ago. To our ManCom members, Vice Chair Peter, who is also the convener of our SAMIS project and my support for the whole year. Peter, thank you. Diane, who selflessly runs the care committee, which is one of the more important functions of this congregation, and is also the convener occasionally of the Jewish Identity Committee, because she gives the report at our ManCom meetings, but she's not the only participant there. Thank you, Diane. I think you're online, but thank you. Haley, who is always present and always with good advice and very perspicacious, and a constant support for the shul and me, and thank you very much for that. Steve is a noisy supporter, but very, very direct, and I appreciate your words, and I appreciate your taking on the SAUPJ. You did get it moving for a short while, and thank you. Thank you for that. Graham, You take on many roles. The official one is security, and we've had no problems with security, so thank you for that. But also the transition of, oh, okay. Well, it would. Have you got one? It won't be like that. It's for the support that you give me as well, Steve, on a personal level. I appreciate it, and Graham as well. And Graham, you're not only security, you deal a lot with the difficult interpersonal social problems of this congregation, and you kind of are, like your dad was, the conscience of our congregation. So thank you for that. To Greer, who I don't think I've seen once. I don't know why. She's obviously quite busy. My thanks to our Board of Guardians, particularly Merle, who chairs it in a very sagacious and confident way, to Catherine, to Marion, and to Andrew Jacob, who through this period of finance has been really very, very helpful to me and to David and to all of us. And your assistance is always freely given and greatly appreciated. To Russell, our administrator, under very difficult conditions, has sort of kept this place going. Christine, you know what I think of you, Christine, and I appreciate everything you do for this congregation. Elise, the newcomer, who's been Rabbi's personal assistant and an administration assistant to Russell, and a real major assistant to myself. To Dallas Berg, who runs our benevolent association, thank you. I think Maureen is here tonight, Maureen Lamakwani, who has volunteered herself to take on front of house duties from January. And we really appreciate what effort you've put into it. It's very important for this congregation to have a friendly face at its front, and you are it. To Aki for the delicious meals that she prepares for us. Edgar, who maintains our gardens, and to Clifford, for being our most diligent janitor and keeper of our valuable books, and so ably managing all our setups, and there are many of those. And he is such a good, kind, and trusted friend of Beit Emmanuel. Also to Michael Kallenbach and to Erika Emden, who so carefully managed the affairs of our ethics committee. A really big thank you to you all. I also want to offer a special thanks to the stalwarts of our congregation. Alistair, Scott, Jens, and David, yourself, and thank you for being here, and particularly the Saturday morning group, who add a certain piousness to our congregation, and in that they are really dedicated every Saturday to being here. And to Merle for chairing the Saturday Talmud study group, and to the whole of the ITJ committee, who have unfailingly applied themselves to ensuring continuity and grace at all our services and functions. A special thanks to all our musicians, Jessica, Tulla, Lee, Rory, Brian, and David, for adding joy, introspection, and rhythm to our prayers. With great sadness, we record the sudden and unexpected death of Ian West less than a month ago. He has been our treasurer for more than 15 years and personally saw us through many of our financial crises. May he be forever a blessing. We also lost Ruth and Virgil Challenge, but to Israel. They were an inspiring and enthusiastic pair, great Beit Emmanuelniks, and are truly missed. It's been another year of ups and downs. With a slower start than we had hoped, we experienced delays in the arrival of our rabbi, and it tested our resolve and planning. But despite these hurdles, we have remained true to our mission, to our community and our values. Every week, our sanctuary has remained open. Not a single service, educational obligation, or commitment has been missed. And that is a testament to the resilience and devotion of each and every one of you. Let me begin by addressing the bear in the room. That's our financial situation. As you may know, we are currently facing an acute cash flow crisis. You certainly are aware of it now. And this has largely been driven by two key factors, and I'm not the accountant. Ongoing difficulties in collecting subscriptions, and two, a mismatch between our expenditure and income, and something we've been struggling with over the past years, and exacerbated by declining membership and rising costs. We have tried to patch these gaps through creative means, income from rentals, billboards and cellular infrastructure. And while this has helped, it was not enough. The passing of our dear Ian, who often miraculously managed to keep things afloat, brought this reality into stark relief. By January, our Treasurer Christine warned us that from mid-May we would not have the funds to meet our obligations. It's also a moment that I'd like to highlight the fact that many of our rental and billboard and other arrangements that we've got are due to Russell's activities. As far as I know, all of them are. I think he's been the person who went and sought them and in fact concluded them. We have put in place a clear and we believe realistic action plan for the next 3 months, with the aim of achieving at least a positive balance sheet. This will allow us to seek bridging finance, whether through loans or gifts, and to see us through this transition. It's very difficult to ask donors for anything when our balance sheet looks like it looks. They're going to say, why don't you fix your own house before you come to ask us? And they're all canny. They're not, you know, they may do it once or twice from charity, but they're not going to do it on any kind of regular basis. So it's very important that we do correct that. This action that we've taken has been heartbreaking and meant asking our senior administrative staff to take their retirement, effective from mid-June. Their response has been nothing short of extraordinary. With immense generosity and loyalty, they have agreed to continue serving us in a contracted capacity, ensuring both continuity and cost efficiency. We have also cancelled our private security contract, which was costing us nearly 500,000 Rand a year, and are actively reviewing alternatives, sustainable arrangements. But we want to assure you that our community safety remains a top priority. Additional steps that we've taken that are ongoing, and some of them have been ongoing and paused, but I think they're all moving, is exploring the sale or rental or repurposing parts of our campus. Developing a close collaboration with regional sister organizations to reduce common overlapping expenses, rationalize education, administration, and other outreach activities. We want to expand Rabbi Costa's initiatives, which will increase congregational participation and spiritual engagement. And you heard her exciting prospects that she briefly mentioned this evening. We must begin to enhance our services, our music offerings, our programs for youth and young families, and ensuring that they feel not only welcomed, but truly at home here. We don't make much effort other than the brocha, and we all gather around for a while and leave. There's no vibrancy, and I'm not blaming anyone other than myself for not pushing that kind of thing. And most crucially, we are working to youngify our committees and leadership structures. Right now, that we really have to do, and we've got to bring new energy and ideas that will carry us into the future. At this point, I really want to offer my personal thanks to David Feenberg. David, you've been fantastic support for me through this difficult period and a beacon of rationality, as has Andrew Jacobs. And thank you, Andrew, if you're listening. And also to Leonard, who unstintingly gives of his time and his opinion and wisdom to whenever I've got a problem or a query. What we must acknowledge is a broader, more troubling reality. Our post-COVID recovery has been slow. Attendance remains well below pre-pandemic levels, particularly during the High Holy Days. We always thought that the High Holy Days would regather our congregation. doesn't seem to have. This is so difficult to reconcile when we see many churches around us facing the same social and economic challenges, not only surviving, but flourishing, and not lacking in enthusiastic participation. I recall in times of great hardship, such as South Africa when it was under apartheid, or Zimbabwe during its civil war, faith communities on both sides grew stronger. Yet across Jewish congregations in South Africa, we see a declining membership and a disengagement. This is I'm not sure I understand that at all. And it may not apply to all congregations, but it certainly seems to apply to most of the progressive congregations. This trend is deeply worrying. Is it apathy or disillusion? And I pray it's not the latter. But, and this is vital, the strength of our community lies not in our numbers alone, but in us, its members, our spirit, our will, and our conviction to be Jewish here, now, and in this place. Melanie Phillips, whom I don't usually quote or agree with, recently wrote, "What has kept us going for centuries is staying true to what we are. We've remained attached to our Jewishness because we recognize the scaffolding of faith, laws, and precepts that is our culture, and that has produced our will to live and gives meaning and purpose to life. We are the heirs to the scaffolding. It has supported generations before us, and it is now our turn to pass that strength on to our children and grandchildren. Let us not fail in this task." Yet we are facing hard times, anti-Semitism, economic strain, and social turbulence. But we are also inheritors of millennia of wisdom, perseverance, and community. We don't back down in the face of difficulty. We meet it with dignity, intelligence, and courage. Now is not the time to shrink or slink away from whom we are. Progressive Judaism, our progressive Judaism, was born in times of challenge. It has been shaped by history to meet moments like this. It is thoughtful, inclusive, and ethical, and evolving, just like our community. You, the members of Beit Emmanuel, are the beating heart of this synagogue. You are the reason we are here today, and it is through your continued commitment that we will remain here, to educate, to pray, to celebrate, to mourn, to laugh, and to dream. Let us draw on our hidden strength, the strength to live Jewishly and joyfully in this moment, so that our children's children and their children will one day perhaps remember who we were and speak proudly of us. Thank you, and strength to you all. Are there any, the next thing is any questions on the chair's report? I'm not dealing with the subcommittee report as declined here. The next issue is, I think I must hand it over to Russell, which is the election of management, the new management committee, and then the election of the members of the Board of Guardians. And then any questions? I think before I leave the stage, does anybody got any questions for me? Sorry, David. Well, statutorily it has to be. We've had some explorations. There was an interest from PPS, which the committee felt was insufficient. It was, I think, it was the value of the land property only. Our newest approach at the moment is we've approached the Chevra Kadisha through Saul Thompson to see if they require extra facilities or space, and in the hope that we're not asking for rent, but that they would share the expenses and maybe assist with the security. That would at least be quite a major saving from our perspective. Sorry, I didn't hear. David? Sorry, I can't easily see. David, is that, sorry, Leonard. I hope my last term will be better than all the previous ones. Sorry, I can't see a hand there. Yes.
Training the people who are all together. Yes and yes. Yes and no. It's actually trying to reinvigorate the entire community. I think that we do special programming and we do youth, but we also do anything here. So if I say I put much of us not but it's fun. I want us to come back into the celebration and have a sense of joy. And not focusing on what's in the past, moving forward. I can tell you my experience was that in New York, I had a similar community with a similar rabbinic history, let's put it that way. And also after my first year there, I said we have to turn things around and do it in this way so that we do programming centered around Shabbat, and then teaching or praying or doing Tai Chi or yoga, to do Simchat Shabbatot and all these initiatives talk about we don't do Jewish all the same way. We can do Jewish in this building and try and, it's not just youth, it's just everybody else. So that it feels renewed and new and fun. We're not doing enough fun in the building, and that's my job here. And I am personally going to knock on doors, big donors, small donors. I don't care if we have to fill out a form. I'll just take them out and lunch and talk to them. I think we can do it. I think we have to remain positive, but also joyful, because I think we can do a lot better. And you have my word that I'm going to not beat the bull rushes, but at least try and get people to open their phone. That's what we have to do.
Thank you, Rabbi. My section of the proceedings is unfortunately probably not going to take very long, and I'm going to deal with the Board of Guardians first because that one is easier. We have one member of the Board of Guardians, and that's Andrew Jacobs, whose term has come to an end, and he's decided not to stand again at this stage. And fortunately, David Feenberg has stepped in to take his place. So without any further ado, I think I can declare David Feenberg to be the newest member of the Board of Guardians, our newest guardian. And thank you. Just to echo what's been said earlier, thank you for your involvement and input in these recent very difficult times. So the situation with the management committee is slightly more difficult. We have one member, Stephen Greenblatt, who's starting the second year of his 2-year term. And we have 3 nominations, those being from Paul Davis, Graham Hochschild, and Johan Mostert. So we have four members on the management committee, which means that we need at least another 6 nominations, and they don't appear to have been forthcoming either by the deadline or from the floor this evening. So I'll actually have to go back to the Constitution to see how we deal with that. Unless there are any nominations from the floor at this time. I'll take that as a no. So yeah, so we'll need to refer back to the Constitution to see. Yeah. Yes, I'll get to that. Yeah. Yeah. So we'll need to refer to the Constitution to see how to deal with those vacancies. Yeah. All right. So we have the one member of ManCom who's, as I mentioned, starting the second year of his term, and 3 new nominations. So Stephen Greenblatt, Paul Davis, Graham Hochschild, and Johan Mostert are hereby declared members of the Management Committee for the term beginning in 2025. Yeah, which closes my part of the meeting. And yeah, who's remaining? It's only Stephen Greenblatt. So the people who are not serving out the rest of their term or whose term came to an end are as follows: Ruth Challens, Virgil Challens, Diane Fine, Haley Gilman, Peter Joseph, Carolyn Massey, and of course Ian West, who passed away recently. We need to, yes, we need 6 new people in a nutshell. Yes, I think that is probably the way it's going to need to be dealt with. Yeah. Yeah.
How many are on this committee?
4. Yeah, we need a minimum of 10 members, so we need an additional 6. David?
Could you and maybe Leonard in the floor of 4 members on ManCom enough to contract on behalf of the city, on behalf of the congregation, and enter into contracts? What happens if you want to do a major contract?
So that would be up to the directors of the non-profit company, I would think. And unfortunately, we have a vacancy there following Ian's passing. The Beit Emmanuel Progressive Synagogue NPC is how we're now officially registered. Okay.
About 200,000 adjusted for inflation, contractually needs to go to the board according to the ratification. So I think that's a statement, yes, it exists, but I don't know about validity of contracts with the.
The point is when 4 people want to support us, you have to have the majority, you have to have 10 people and the majority of 10 to get a
So I would think that the first item of business at the first management committee meeting would be to try and co-opt those additional members so that we have at least 10 members on the management committee. And yeah, I would think we're not going to be entering into any contracts before that has been sorted, as well as the directors for the NPC. Once Mancom has been properly constituted, would need to decide how to fill that vacancy. And I would think probably the treasurer, the new treasurer would be the third member. Because, yeah, that was the way it worked in the past. Any more questions? Thank you. Then I'll hand over to Paul to close the proceedings.
Thank you. Are there any matters under general that anybody would like to raise? Let me shine this light to see if it picks up the hand. No. Thank you. Then I would like to thank you all for your attendance and attention, and I formally close this meeting. Thank you. Yeah.
In the hall.
There is tea and cake in the hall for those who would like to have some refreshment. Just take your lights with you.